In my last episode, I covered the essential tonic tools that I suggest to my clients to manage anxiety and build a foundation for mental health. But what if you are in the thick of it, experiencing an anxiety spiral, and you just need immediate relief to feel normal again? Well, that's what we are covering today in Herbs for Anxiety Part 2, Anxiety First Aid. In this episode, we're diving into the herbs and supplements for those really tough moments when anxiety hits hard, because anxiety can be incredibly overwhelming, and it's important to have effective tools at our disposal to manage those acute moments that don't create dependency like some pharmaceuticals do. Now, just to recap, last episode we talked about our tonic tools, things like magnesium, vitamin D, and fish oil, and then our everyday herbs like skullcap and oat straw. These are the foundational support tools that you want to work with to create a vibrant, healthy ecosystem to support your mental health and your nervous system health. And these are going to be the things that you take long term to support your system while you work on the root cause of your anxiety. And if you missed that episode or you didn't grab the handout yet, I did create a little anxiety toolkit PDF that covers all of the tools that I'm sharing, as well as resources, where to get your herbs, and also a fun little anxiety quiz. I guess that's fun, so that you can see how all the weird things that are happening in your body might actually be related to stress and anxiety. So there's a link to that in the description. And it also includes all of the things that we're going over today, which of course are anxiety first aid herbs. And to understand how these herbs work when we are actually having an acute anxiety attack, we need to understand GABA. So GABA is a neurotransmitter in the brain that plays a role in regulating nervous system activity. It's actually the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, meaning that it helps to calm down neural activity and prevents overexcitement. As a neurotransmitter, it has a calming effect on anxiety. It promotes nervous system regulation. It's really important for sleep and getting the mind to cool down at the end of the day so we can fall asleep. It can help to prevent muscle spasms and tension. We actually have GABA receptors all over the body and the muscles, and it is associated with balanced mood and reduced symptoms of anxiety and depression. And increasing GABA during times of anxiety and stress is my primary method of support during acute anxiety attacks. And I'm going to talk about 2 herbs that can do that, but you can also get over-the-counter GABA supplements. Now, I'm going to be honest. The research on the use of GABA is mixed. The good news is that GABA supplements are definitely legit. They have GABA in them, in the amount that they say they have, and they're not usually contaminated with lead or other heavy metals. The bad news is that there isn't a ton of clinical evidence that GABA in these supplements crosses the blood-brain barrier to increase GABA in the brain. But there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that suggests that GABA supplementation is helpful for things like anxiety, sleep, and stress. Pretty much every GABA supplement has a ton of positive reviews, and user experience absolutely matters. People find stress, anxiety, and insomnia relief from the use of GABA supplements, even if it's just a placebo effect. Placebo effect is incredibly powerful because the power of our mind and of belief does incredibly astonishing things, and we absolutely should take that into account when we are exploring wellness interventions that can decrease anxiety. And of course, there are GABA receptors all over the body. So even if it doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier, it can potentially hit other receptors in the body, inducing a state of calm from the bottom up. Now, my personal favorite when I'm in active anxiety mode and I have to keep working and functioning is the Thorne brand, GABA 100 and GABA 250. I'm not sponsored by them. I personally lean more towards GABA supplementation when I'm having anxiety flares. So like when I'm having anxiety about having anxiety. And obviously that can create a significant downward spiral. I also notice that it helps calm the mind down at night so that I can fall asleep without laying in bed with constant thinking and rumination. So I do suggest having a GABA supplement if you want some extra things in your toolkit. But if you're trying to stay away from capsules for whatever reason, the next 2 herbs that we're going to talk about both increase GABA in the brain, making them excellent anxiety first aid herbs. And of course, my absolute favorite, the one I talk about all the time, is Passionflower. Passiflora incarnata, I should probably just do a whole episode on it so I can always just point back to it. So I'm going to add that to my very long to-do list. But for now, I'm just going to say that it's a super effective nervine, sedative, hypnotic, and antispasmodic, and it's the #1 herb that I use to get myself, my clients, and my friends, and my family out of anxiety spirals. It is most commonly used to relieve anxiety and nervous tension, and one of the reasons that it's so beneficial is because it significantly increases GABA in the brain. And that makes it a really great tool for things like intrusive thoughts, circular thinking, rumination, overthinking, a racing mind, and just those uncomfortable mental health symptoms that get in the way of moving through our day comfortably. Passionflower is like the off switch when we just can't get the mind to stop talking and being overwhelming. And you can use this herb as a tea, adding 1 teaspoon of dried passionflower per cup of boiling water and steeping it for 20 to 40 minutes. And as I mentioned in our last episode on tonic herbs, I do like to add a little bit of this to my oat straw if I'm having an active anxiety phase. But for actual anxiety attacks, I much prefer a tincture. If you are having an anxiety attack, you want to take 1 to 2 dropperfuls of tincture every 15 to 20 minutes until your symptoms subside. So when you are having those symptoms and you need to turn the mind off. You can also take it every 15 to 20 minutes if you're having trouble sleeping and it can promote sleepiness at night, or if you wake up in the middle of the night with a racing mind or an anxiety attack and you just can't get back to sleep. I have a bottle of passionflower everywhere. I have it on the side of my bed. I have one in my purse. I have one in my office. I have one in my living room. It's actually right here. So I really have one everywhere just in case, especially for those really hard days. And it's a pretty safe herb and it can be taken with most mental health medications to add extra support. You probably don't want to be taking it with benzos or if you are on other strong sedatives. But again, if you're on those strong sedatives, those are probably going to be your first aid support. The only risk with those sedative medications, things like Xanax and Ativan, is that they can create dependency and they can become difficult and dangerous to get off of if you become addicted to them. So of course, I'm going to go for safe herbs that don't create dependency, which brings me to an important point. If you plan to bring passionflower or any herb into your life, make sure that you either consult your doctor or do a quick little Google cursory search to make sure that there are no surprise contraindications and interactions with any medications that you have or that you're taking so that you can stay happy and healthy and super safe. Because herbs are not fairy tale medicines. They are not make-believe. They have real effects on the body. And we want to make sure that we don't mess anything up when we are just cowgirling our way through our wellness. Our next first aid herb is actually one that was suggested to me by my psychiatrist when I was initially getting medical help for my anxiety, and that is lavender. So lavender, like passionflower, modulates GABA and serotonin, and it can decrease pain, decrease epileptic activity, and improve sleep quality. It's also a mild antidepressant. Now, most people know that lavender is relaxing, and there are a lot of ways that you can use it. You can use it as a massage oil, in an essential oil diffuser, in a bath. I think of those more as atmospheric lavender interventions, and for anxiety attacks, like when we are actually in it experiencing mental health symptoms, I prefer the internal use of lavender. You can make a cup of lavender tea. I personally enjoy the taste, but some people probably will think that it tastes like soap. So you can also use a lavender tincture, and this is something that you can make yourself. But my favorite lavender product for anxiety called Calm Aid by Nature's Way. It's an encapsulated form of lavender essential oil called Selexin, and it's clinically shown to be as effective as half of an Ativan, which is a benzodiazepine, but without the dangers of dependency or overdose risk that come along with benzos. Now, for me, someone who grew up in a family with a lot of drug addiction, that's a really big deal that an herbal supplement can be compared to such a strong class of pharmaceuticals. Now, Selexin or Calmade is available over the counter in the US, and I believe in other countries you might need a prescription for it, but that is what I primarily use and suggest to my clients because it's very easy and it's very effective, especially before an event that you know you might be overwhelmed, like public speaking, or maybe a first date, or getting on a plane, or like going to a meeting or checking your email, any of those things that when we're really sensitive and when we're really stressed out, they trigger an anxiety or a panic attack. And outside of those predictable anxious situations, I use this at night to help me sleep. And when things just get really overwhelming and I'm feeling anxiety strongly in my body, as opposed to when stress levels hit my mind, like with intrusive thoughts and excessive rumination. For that, I prefer Passionflower and maybe a Gaba supplement. But if you explore some of these tools, you are going to likely find your own rhythm with them based on your own experience and when you want to take certain things. It just comes with having a relationship with these tools. So those are going to be my top 3 acute anxiety care for generalized anxiety disorders and other mental health symptoms that show up in the mind and show up like anxiety. There are a few other honorable mentions that didn't quite make the cut in my official toolkit, like valerian, which is a great sedative for sleep. So if anxiety really hits you at night and you need that extra punch to help you fall asleep, valerian's a great option. Kava is a good one, particularly helpful for social anxiety. There's blue vervain, which is really nice for like tense neck and shoulders and people who wear their shoulders up to their ears. There's also reishi, which is a great medicinal mushroom and adaptogen that creates a deep well of calm and peace in the body. And of course, as I always say, our herbal practice doesn't exist in a vacuum. We also do want to consider that many of us are going to need more lifestyle adjustments to really manage and eradicate anxiety and get our baseline anxiety levels down to 0. So when I work with a client, it usually starts with squeaky wheel gets the grease. We're going to get our first aid herbs in, we're going to add our tonic herbs in, and we're going to make sure that we have tools to manage the issue and get out of chronic flares, whether they are for anxiety or some other issue. After that, we really want to start looking at other lifestyle choices once we have the main issue under control or the symptoms are chill enough that we have more space to consider the larger environment of our life and our habits. And without going into too much detail, some things that I find really helpful are first, working on the vagus nerve and restoring parasympathetic balance. The vagus nerve is like the off switch to our stress response. And I find that regular vagus nerve stimulation is like installing a sense of safety into the body. Plus, it's so important for however stress shows up in the body, whether it's the digestive system, the urinary system, chronic pain, however your stress shows up. And if you want me to talk more about that, it is a truly fascinating subject and something that I work with my clients a lot because I'm also a licensed body worker. Feel free to drop a line in the comments so that the team knows what you're actually interested in so that we can make some content around that. You can also do practices like yoga and meditation. They can be really beneficial because they stimulate the vagus nerve and they support the health and blood flow to the rational thinking parts of the mind. Things like ear seeds and acupuncture are well known to increase resilience and manage anxiety symptoms. It might be important to make some nutritional changes like eating more protein and fat and fiber so that we can balance the blood sugar, since blood sugar highs and lows can have a significant effect on mental health even if you don't have diabetes or are not at risk to develop diabetes. We also want to consider laying off stimulants, especially caffeine, which is kind of like shooting anxiety right into the body, especially if your primary method of getting caffeine is through coffee. Even just switching from coffee to tea can make a big difference in our stimulation levels. And then you also want to think about improving sleep quality. Maybe increasing vigorous movement practices that help us process the stress hormones that we create on a daily basis. So obviously there are a lot of lifestyle adjustments that one can make. It can be overwhelming, especially when we are actively experiencing anxiety flares. So if you do want to know more about how to implement some of those changes, how they change what is happening in the body from a holistic perspective, you can check out my upcoming course, the Mandala of anxiety management, where I actually go over all of the potential interventions and I guide you through the process of creating the perfect anti-anxiety protocol for you. I guide you through the process of vagus nerve stimulation, of how to do yoga and meditation so that it actually changes your anxiety levels, how to make all of these different changes. And then I also guide you through the process of looking at all of these tools and picking which ones are going to be the most practical for your life, because not everyone's wellness practice should or can look the same. You really want the wellness practice that is going to be unique for you. And while there are general things that we want to consider when we're making changes to our anxiety levels, there are going to be a lot of things that are going to be different for each person. So instead of going through the process of trial and error for however long, we'll start with the things that make the biggest impact for you. And so in that course, I'll actually teach you all the practices that I share with my clients when I work with them one-on-one and the things that I do with myself to manage my anxiety. Okay, so I hope that this was helpful. If you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe, all that good stuff. You can get the PDF handout with all of the information, with all the resources, with all of my suggested products in the description. And yeah, I think that's it for me. Okay, I love you.